Should the United Nations recognize the unilateral declaration of independence by Kosovo, or will this encourage other disputed regions to break away too? Serbia, which insists Kosovo remain part of its territory, suffered a setback after the International Court of Justice deemed that Kosovo's declaration did not violate international law. My guest today on Hard Talk is Vuk Jeremic, Serbia's foreign minister. He believes Kosovo sets a dangerous precedent for the world. Is he right? Vuk Jeremic, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Okay, just start off by explaining to us why this attachment to Kosovo. Why do you believe that Kosovo belongs to Serbia?
Well, this is a very long historical story. It goes back centuries. The first capital of Serbia is in Kosovo. The Serbian state was founded in Kosovo. The UN internationally recognized borders of the state of Serbia, they encompass Kosovo. But right now, this is much more about the present and the future.
Just to explain why, though, you have this attachment. You say it's historical, but actually the Serbs lost control of Kosovo in 1389 to the Ottoman Turks. You only had governed it for 250 years. The Ottoman Turks had been in Kosovo for 500 years.
Well, actually, I really don't want to spend too much time talking about history, but prior to the 1389, the actual Serbian state, the first Serbian state in the 12th century, was founded in Kosovo. Serbian national and religious identity is intimately related to Kosovo. Kosovo is the cradle of Serbian national identity much before the 13th century.
True, you have your churches, your monasteries that were built in the area around the 7th, 8th centuries and so on. But the point is this, you are making a claim historically, and yet I put it to you that you did lose control of Serbia in the 14th century, and the Serbs didn't go back in until 1912.
Well, actually, the 13th century, Serbia lost control of the whole of Serbia because the whole of the Balkans was occupied by the Ottoman Empire. So there were no parts of Serbia that were not occupied by the Ottomans for about 500 to 600 years.
Kosovo has been inhabited by ethnic Albanians, the majority of the inhabitants of Kosovo for the best part of the last 2 centuries. The majority of people in Kosovo have been ethnic Albanians.
Well, not exactly. This is not exactly the case. We're just talking about the last
Well, it is actually. I've spoken to a number of historians. Malcolm Noel from All Souls College at Oxford University, written a book about Kosovo. Misha Glenny. These are all Balkan experts, and they've all said it's hard to say, but certainly for the last 2 centuries, the vast majority of the inhabitants of Kosovo have been ethnic Albanians, and in 1912 they wanted to join Albania.
Well, we can have a very, very long discussion about a history right now, but what we have on the table is that the internationally recognized borders of a UN member state, this is the Republic of Serbia, they encompass Kosovo. According to the Security Council Resolution 1244, all the states in the world have recognized Serbia actually in their current borders. So we're talking about the current international legal and political order and the fact whether or not one can unilaterally change the borders of internationally recognized UN member states. Okay. This is what we have at stake right now.
Let's just remind people then, in 1999, of course, NATO went in and pushed out the Serbs. Slobodan Milosevic had gone in to try to keep Kosovo, and the ethnic Albanians who had fled or been pushed out returned, and it was put under the United Nations, became a UN protectorate. Some years on, and the ethnic Albanian majority, who make up 90% the population of Kosovo today, have their unilateral declaration of independence. So here we are now, the International Court of Justice, the judicial organ of the United Nations, says that this does not violate international law. It gave an opinion, and a majority opinion. Where does that leave you now?
Well, what the court exactly said is that the Declaration of Independence did not violate international law, and what are going to be the repercussions, the political repercussions of this, whether or not this brings statehood, is a political matter to be decided by the member states of the United Nations inside the UN organs. But since you raised this issue of 1999 and the set of circumstances that have led to it, allow me to respond by a very, very short story. It was the content of a discussion that I had with a foreign minister of a major world country in this context. And I remember very well the words of the minister. The minister said, I understand your legal arguments, I understand your political arguments, but one thing that you need to understand, Mr. Jeremic, is that you had a particularly brutal dictatorship in your country. This dictatorship was oppressing an ethnic minority to the point of extreme. This brought about international intervention. And now, although you are a democracy right now, and this dictator is dead, 95% of these people, they no longer want to be a part of your country. This is a reality that you have to accept. And my answer to the minister was, pardon me, but I failed to notice when we started talking about Iraq and stopped talking about Serbia. We're talking about the brutal dictator.
Oh, well.
We're talking about severe oppressing of an ethnic minority, international intervention. Now,
right.
Iraq is a
I've
democracy.
allowed you the time for that story.
But you know, Kurdistan, 95% of Kurds, they want to break free from Iraq. Iraq and Saddam is dead. Iraq is a democracy.
That doesn't help us, though.
But that doesn't change the situation.
That doesn't help us now, because you've got, as you said, 95% of the majority of the inhabitants of Kosovo, ethnic Albanians. They've got their own institutions. They want their independence. They don't want to be part of Serbia. What right do you have to thwart the will of the vast majority? These 2 million people in Kosovo, you've only got 200,000 Serbs, ethnic Serbs in Kosovo. What gives you the right to thwart the will of the majority?
Well, what we believe is that the fundamental criterion for creating a statehood since 1945 shouldn't be changed in this particular case. Not a single state in the world was created after the Second World War. No breakaway territory in the world has ever attained statehood without consent of a parent state. That consent always came through a process of negotiation.
So you might give the consent if you through negotiations?
That is not what I said. What I said is that we need a peaceful dialogue. We need a peaceful dialogue between Belgrade and the leaders in Pristina that are going to make sure that a compromise solution acceptable to all parties is found in the end of this process. Never before in the history of the world, since 1945, not a single territory achieved independence.
Do you have
we
the
shouldn't
support?
be making a precedent.
But do you have the support of the international community? I mean, let you tell you that the opinion by the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, legal experts like Mark Weller at Cambridge University says there are no further legal means to challenge Kosovo's status, and that in terms of international law, the question of the legality of Kosovo's secession is now settled for all practical purposes. You've got powerful countries like the United States, Germany. They're all accepting that Kosovo should be independent. You've got to accept that, really. It's inevitable, isn't it?
Well, about 2/3 of the world, including some of the very influential countries in the world, do not recognize Kosovo's independence. The International Court said that the Declaration of Independence does not violate international law. Whether this brings a statehood is a matter to be decided by the UN. Currently, in the UN, there is not a single country that decided to change its opinion on Kosovo's independence as a result of such ruling. With all the respect to this
Mark Weller,
Cambridge fellow, Cambridge
legal expert.
With all due respect,
it's not just him. I cited him, but there are
this,
many others who agree with him.
there is not a single country in the world that accepted to change its position on Kosovo as a result of this ruling. Now,
let's just explain then. So you brought up the United Nations and the fact that you're right, 69 countries so far have recognised Kosovo's unilateral declaration
as opposed to 123.
of independence. Sure, 69 out of the nearly 200 members of the United Nations. So the UN General Assembly on the 9th of September is going to be meeting to discuss the opinion of the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, and also the draft resolution that Serbia has put forward. How do you think your efforts are going to try to persuade the nations to go with your view that Kosovo's
Well,
declaration
what is
shouldn't be
going to
accepted?
happen on the 9th of September is by means of the procedures of the UN, is what is the political conclusion of the ICJ's opinion. That's how it works. Because the UN asked for the legal opinion, it has to go back to the UN, and a political conclusion has to be reached inside the General Assembly of the United Nations. What Serbia proposed as a draft resolution, in other words, what Serbia proposed is to be a conclusion of this process, is that since unilateral secession is not an acceptable way of resolving territorial issues, the parties should try and engage and work together to come to a compromise solution.
All right, but you said more than that in the draft resolution. You say the court's opinion did not give Kosovo Albanians the right to secede, and as you say, and that unilateral secession is not an acceptable way to solve territorial issues. You've been working very, very hard with your team of officials to try to persuade countries at the United Nations that they should back your resolution and therefore not accept Kosovo's declaration of independence. And I ask you, how do you think your efforts are going? Because you've got these powerful nations who are not with you.
The Security Council is split on this.
It's difficult, though. It's going to be difficult.
It is very difficult, of course. It's a very difficult question. Security Council is split on this. 9 countries support Serbia. 6 countries are supporting the Declaration of Independence. The UN is also split. 2/3 of the world countries support Serbia. 1/3 is very strongly.
Well, we don't know. They've got to vote, and they need a 2/3 majority.
No, actually,
Albanians.
well, this resolution needs to be passed by a simple majority.
Simple majority.
Simple majority. But I think what is really at stake right now is, now that we know after the court ruling that there are texts of the declaration